But I think probably what I'm going to share with you is the few things we've been doing lately. I think with the legislation that's happening in England 2016, in Scotland we are 1 year behind, so we learn from the experience. So mandate comes in 2017. But in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we start engaging. We move from looking at BIM and information, so look at the practicalities, what happens in practice there, and how can we interact with the practice and see where they are, where we are. We are a bit isolated there, so a lot of the practitioners who come to meet us happen to be graduates of our school. So there's familiarity there. And we start having, the university would like to call them business breakfast. Richard and I would call them BIM clinics. So we just focus on the details and the practicalities of things. And the whole idea is we get about 20 practitioners, whether they're ATs, architects, contractors or surveyor, and we sit and we have a debate every 3 months to see how they're progressing, how are our courses and our students fit into what they are doing, and we want to move the agenda to the practicalities of BIM rather than just talking about BIM like we've been doing for many years. And hence the title, Getting to Grips with BIM. And that's what we've done over the last few years, try to see what can we apply that part of BIM, how does it affect practice, and how that affects what they do on a daily basis, and how in a business sense rather than just from a theoretical point of view. So that's the context. And I chose team working and information management as part of collaboration. I realized I couldn't speak about a lot of things. I had to focus in on those areas, which we are touching on at the moment. So I think if I start by collaboration, which is the main word, everybody's talking about collaboration. And I think as practitioners, we've been doing collaboration for many years. If we didn't collaborate, probably no building would be built. It is the quality of collaboration and the nature of collaboration that we are questioning rather than collaboration as a whole. And borrowing the triangle, which is contractor used for time and quality and cost, and I thought this team organization, clients and professional, the human factor. And I think, in my view, is probably for many years, the BIM debate focused on the mega aspect of BIM, the evangelical, the theoretical, what are the benefits of BIM, and the technical aspect of BIM, but ignore the human aspect of BIM. And I think we all realize that if the human aspect, whether they are clients or professionals or users, are ignored, I think probably we fail in the end. And I thought that's the key, and I think that's what we are trying to do at the moment. Get clients, probably we're not having a lot of success in having a clear debate with a client, and I'll give you an anecdote in a minute about that. But professionals, we are engaging with. And then we looked at, I thought, if we are having clients and professionals and the human aspect working and collaborating, then comes the BIM strategies. I think we have to move away from this big BIM that envelopes everything and start looking, what can BIM do in the real practice? For us, our context is we don't have large companies. Large companies come to North Scotland, build a building and disappear, and they're all based in the central belt or further south. What we do mainly with small and medium and micro enterprises, which they happen to be 90% of the enterprise around the UK. And those are the majority. The minority are the big ones who are probably doing lots of sorts of BIM. And that's what we are trying to focus on. And the other aspect, I said, if the human aspect in collaboration can work, and the strategies, and the strategy has to look, how do we implement actually in a process of a project, rather than just put in strategies. If we design a project, and there's a business case for a project, from a procurement point of view, from different aspects, BIM should be part of that strategy if we want that to help and make the system work efficiently. And comes the information, which is what the project or what the building is about. So I thought if there's any collaboration in a process over the life cycle of a project, those are the 3 areas we need to concentrate on. I'll just give some background very quickly. You talk to client, I think probably it's well established. Clients, We moved in the early 2000s to 3D modeling. They can see a model, they can look at it, they can visualize it, they can do run through, it's all fine. But when you start talking about the data that is useful in that, the dialogue stops. And especially when you ask if that's going to cost a little bit of money, that becomes even worse. So there is an element of clients and employers have to be brought into the big debate. I think that was recognized in the task group policy, the poor factor, which specifically asks certain data to be provided to clients at a certain stage that enable commercial checks, whether that's a developer or that's an end user, enable checking on costs, bringing some of those efficiencies. But if the client is not aware and doesn't buy into those, I think we see there is a problem there. It does put the client at the heart of the design and construction and collaborative process, but does it really happen at the moment? And we are not sure, at least from what we've been doing, we are not very sure that clients are engaged sufficiently enough to be part of that collaborative process. They're engaged at the beginning and being engaged at the end and leave that middle bit to other people. And I think this is the key point. If we want clients to collaborate with professionals and deliver quality products, buildings, during construction and post-construction, a certain element of maturity, and you have to be well informed. Who's going to do that job? I'm not sure. The government talks about as the public sector buildings, the government will do that. Our experience is we opened the debate with our local authority, as was mentioned earlier, probably they're least engaged at the moment compared to the private sector. So that's an issue there. So very briefly, a few challenges. I think if we are familiar with this diagram, layers of design, how many people are involved into design and construction of project. We look at from planning, from construction, from detailing, from the commercial aspects, so many people involved. But we moved from the idea of master builder that doesn't exist anymore. We have specialist disciplines looking at different things, and that's where the collaboration has to come in. How do you bring those people who are doing different things to aim at producing a product that is well collaborated and efficient, both in its delivery and both in the processes that lead to that delivery? I personally believe if the processes don't work, the product will not be delivered. I expect this is well known. Design teams expect to deal with multi-layers complex issues. Some of them have been discussed this morning. That needs collaboration. And collaboration is not limited to a minimum, which is often that's what we do. At least one I practiced a few years ago. You collaborate when you have a problem. You don't collaborate when you don't have a problem. So it becomes problem solving, that collaborating. And I think hopefully that's what the BIM debate is trying to change. I put this diagram here, which look at, and what is key in this diagram I put there is, traditionally we have the professionals, and we are all professionals here, are the center of the collaboration. The collaboration happens between professionals, which are in the center. You have a lead project, whether they are an architect or a contractor or who a profession happens to lead it, and everybody goes through them. And my view is, and probably what becoming established in you, that collaboration is as good as those professionals can be. If you have one link that is not working or two links not working and collaborating, the whole system collapses. And I think that's what, hopefully, BIM is trying to move us away from that, dependent on professionals, and there's no diminishing of the role of professional. The role of professional will remain, but it's the system, how they work. If I go to the next one, where it's the product that becomes the center. So the professionals all working, collaborating to create a product, whether that's a building or whatever that product is. So the collaboration is done through, and in this case, happen to be the information, which is the BIM model, the information that creates that product, that building. So if we all can collaborate through the system, we're all aiming at the same goal. which is that product, that building, rather than us collaborating to create something and we are not always in this same wavelength. And I think that's the kind of debate we started looking at, and with practitioners discussing how they're implementing some of these systems into their business models. So there's a refocus of the collaborative process, refocused on the product rather than on people. And a shift of focus from professionals' role to the product itself, which is the building. And it's fundamentally, we've altered the future of team members' input. And I think I'll come to that in a moment. The input now is different. Before we used to run in stages, we're all familiar with our stages. We do my stage, my bit, pass that stage to another, and it goes on. But now, collaboration is almost instantaneous. The information we provide as professional can help or hinder other professionals progressing the whole product. And that can happen on a daily basis. So the attitude we take towards information management and collaboration has to change from that I've done my bit and I only collaborate to where I can, to there's a constant collaboration throughout the life cycle. I just create 3 points here. So collaboration focus on product, I've said that. All information is shared, that's not new. But the BIM technology, I think, lots of people, especially in the bigger debate on BIM, think BIM is going to solve all our problems. We have to accept BIM is like any other technology. Yeah, it has to facilitate. It's a facilitator to what we do. And if we take that attitude and build it in our business systems. I mean, I spoke to contractors just a week ago, and they say the risk is too high. We cannot touch it with a barge pole at the moment. And that's because they see this wave coming towards them, which is called BIM. And they are not, they're afraid to engage to see what it is and what they can do with it. How can it help them in their business processes? At the moment, this is something they don't want to touch because they think the risk is too high. But if you deconstruct it to each small element and try to integrate it in the processes, and that's what we're trying to work with small business in our area. I always say, my view is, for any business, and there's a lot of business people who lead businesses here, if you want to introduce anything, if there is no value to it, why should you do it? Whether that's monetary value or efficiency value or value for your clients, what's the point? And I think we apply that rule to BIM and collaboration. If BIM isn't going to bring any value to a practice, why do it? Yes, maybe you'll be pushed by legislation. We always find ways how to go around that. But I think that's important. And I put here, we all talked about lonely BIM and collaborative BIM. Collaborative BIM being this big model where everything shares information and everything works very smoothly. Unfortunately, that's happened in the minority of organizations. Less than 10% of construction organizations in the UK maybe will be ready by this year or next year for it. The majority of the SMEs and micro SMEs, 90%, will not be ready for it. And that's why we introduced here this diagram, which has been modified. The 2016 becomes a starting point and a finishing point. And I think when I've spoken to David Phelps a few years ago and said, how do you think 2016 would work out? He said, well, we're looking at 2020, 25 before everybody can get there. And I think that's where we have to take, in the colloquial way, the pinch of salt, where BIM has to be implemented because processes have to be changed, business models have to be changed, and before that collaboration kicks in fully. And I think we should aim at, like the building regulation earlier, you don't set about detailing your projects just to meet the building regs. You want to exceed the building regs. The same comes in the value. If we can exploit collaboration and BIM beyond what the legislation requires us and bring some efficiency benefits, then I think that's where the value comes in. I think there is the push-pull factor, which is the BIM task group has recognized the value of the professionals and recognize the value of the client and how they both contribute. And it is how to get to them working together and contributing and get working at the same level. And I think that's, at least for us from our experience, seems to be the, the challenge. BIM is seen as an enabler. I think I repeat that because that's what seems to be bouncing back from professionals. It's how do we do with this big thing? How do we train our people? So if you see it as an enabler that helps you through processes rather than something you have suddenly is going to happen and change all your what you built over the last 20 or 30 years. The collaboration in BIM is multidisciplinary. That includes users, clients, everybody who's involved in the construction of the assets.
1 minute.
1 minute, okay, that's fine. I brought these here, this diagram, which is probably familiar, a lot of you are familiar with, and just to see how we engage communication. That illustrates how we professionals engage with each other. Nowadays we use email, with telephone, we use meeting, with a lot of sort of things. But information drops somewhere. Somewhere is not informed on the way. Make a phone call with my colleague and I forget to phone the other one. And that piece of information causes problems. If we have a common data environment, which BIM has to do, all the information is centralized and everybody gets the same information. That's two-way information debate happens because of the system, because of the business model, rather than because of relying always on people, which we cannot do away with, but systems can help. And that's what the enability, BIM becomes an enabler. Quickly, condition of success. So there's the how, the why, the what, and the how. And this is how BIM has to be integrated in the strategy of a project. The RIBA levels, stage 0 now talks about the strategy and the business case for a building. BIM has been introduced at that level. You cannot just introduce it as a technical solution later on. Again, setting and realizing whole life targets. There is no point in trying to use BIM because it makes building, our drawing is efficient. It has to be looked at the life cycle, how the data can be used post-construction for the asset management over the life cycle. And if we think in that holistic way, and that's where BIM becomes critical. And I think from our experience, that's the long-term view that is not being looked at. We're going to look at how we introduce it, how we use Revit in our office. And a lot of our practitioners use Revit. We have a big, sort of medium-sized architecture company in Aberdeen. They use Revit. They will not employ anybody who doesn't use Revit. But they haven't moved beyond that for the last 10 years. They're just doing nice models.
Finish up.
Okay, I'll get to my conclusion. These are all things probably you're familiar with. I will just go to the last, how we work at the moment. Right, here. Where I started, and I said team organization and client, what's coming out is client awareness is critical. Engagement with the clients at the moment in relating to BIM is very, very minimal. If they have become engaged and changing a working and business attitudes, that applies to professionals. At the moment we have some businesses that have been established for a long time, they will start looking at changing those. In terms of the strategies for engagement, BIM have to set strategy within the overall project strategy. There's no point in creating BIM, we're going to do it this way, and the projects are running in different direction. So, and the information management, and that's where we see there's a role. I mean, just to finalize in 30 seconds, the meeting we had 3 weeks ago, we invited 25 practitioners, including contractors. I looked around the room, and then 1/3 was our graduates, and probably about 5 of them were ATs. And all of them have been engaging in trying to implement some aspect of BIM, because they do have the skills. But unfortunately, the feedback coming from them, we do have the skills, but we don't have the strategic skills for our project, because we are junior members. And that's, and the question to me, the final point I want to make is, I think it will be the wrong way to address, we're going to train a lot of students to do BIM and 3D modeling and go, I'm going to change the world. It has to come as well from the top as from the bottom. You have to have a strategic view. If BIM has to be implemented, it has to come from the top. And then you get those skills that can do it very quickly. If we're going to just rely on rising to the bottom, it may take us more than 20 years, which is the CAT case. And that's me.
Thank you.